Welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-fans discuss controversial and noteworthy comic books and comic book history. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
And it's our end of the year extravaganza. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy
This episode
New Year.
comes out
We
on January 1st,
made it.
2020.
Yeah, we made it.
We're in the future.
We're
2020.
a little worse for wear, but
Yeah, but we're still
in one piece. Well, sometimes, you gotta, if things get tough, you gotta cool down and you gotta take a walk around America and see what America is to truly understand it.
wait, are we still in One Piece or are we in Bleach? I thought we were.
So what that was alluding to is we're going to be talking about Superman Grounded for back issues.
Yeah, so if this is your first New Year's with us, then we always take a book that we covered way back in the pre-Darryl and Phil days, and we make them read it, and then Sly and I don't have to read it, so it's nice.
Yeah.
And that's what we do for the first half.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, Darryl?
Oh, we also are not going to recap the story either, so if you want, like, a walkthrough of what happens during it, you can go listen to the old episode, because we're just going to discuss it in, total here.
But it seems like Darryl wants to go page by page the way he's been talking about it.
I do really enjoy it.
And later on, we will be talking about all of our favorites and least favorites from the year. Not new stuff, but stuff that we covered.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's our usual New Year's extravaganza. So I would like to have an extra special thank you to one of our eldest fans, Zach Fig, for recommending us Superman Grounded those many moons ago.
Wow.
Wow.
He's been with us a while.
I think that might have been the first tweet I ever got from him. That was like, you guys should do Superman Grounded. And I was like, fuck, who is this guy? And why is he making us do this?
Thanks, Zach.
But, yeah, thank you.
So what are your overall thoughts before we get into actual details?
This is really interesting. This is like my favorite type of Superman, where it's just a whole bunch of people pointing their finger and going like, fuck you, buddy. Like, you're a piece of trash. I'm like, good. Yes, finally, a person speaking for the little guy over here.
I also really liked it. At first, I was like, the setup of the book has this woman basically saying "fuck you" for being out in space when my husband needed like cancer surgery.
That was so great, because if you listen to the Patreon stuff, we always do Jimmy Olsen comics, and Superman's always in doing a space mission when he's like needed most. And it's great that even this comic is like, you were in space when we needed you most.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I didn't like about that setup though is like, I get it that she's mad about her husband, but if the planet blows up, her husband's dead. Like this, I get why people get upset about this stuff, but Superman often is saving the whole world. Mm-hmm. And I know the point is like, well, you're missing the forest for the trees or whatever, but or you're not seeing whatever the phrase is.
I mean, there's someone that brings up during that conversation, they're like, he can't be everywhere at once. He has like solar systems to save.
But she also says, like, yeah, you should have used your X-ray vision through my husband's cancer cells, and like no indication that he can fucking even do that.
Yeah, for me,
I interpret that as everyone viewing Superman as a god when he's not a god.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird setup, because I think a better thing would be like, the fact that they show you. No, I'm thinking of the second part, Grounded, where they're like, Superman got a cat out of a tree, where I'm like, it should be more focused on him doing like large scale stuff to save the world, than like maybe like some debris fell on her husband from like a building falling down and it killed him, and she's like, you should have like flown in and saved him from getting crushed, because the X-ray and cancer stuff is a weird, like, we've never seen him be able to do this, and if he was able to do this would be like a weird world to live in where this is what he's obligated to do.
Yes.
Is to cure cancer patients.
I intentionally didn't want to give you guys any context, and I'm not going to get into the whole history, but the reason why this story existed at all is because Superman was just in this like multi-year long crossover event called New Krypton, where basically a new planet was formed with a bunch of Kryptonians on it, and the whole thing was like Superman has to choose which world is he going to live on. Mm-hmm. And of course, that can't be the status quo for long, so the planet blows up and they all die. But so like when they say like you've been in space, it's more like Superman kind of like abandoned Earth, and I use quotes, that's like just the rhetoric that was used in the story a lot.
Yeah.
To like go live with Kryptonians. So I think it's more like I always read it like Sly's saying of like he literally was gone for a long time, like turning his back on Earth.
I disagree with that interpretation mainly because
It's your interpretation.
I know I'm saying, but I disagree because I don't just say I disagree. Unlike you, Ryan, I don't just say I disagree and move on. I like to point out an argument. My argument is that they paint Flash and Batman as disconnected as well, saying Flash says, "I just see a blow when I pass through the country." Like I don't see the individual people at all. Like J. Michael Straczynski is very explicitly saying the superheroes as a whole are disconnected, and Superman is trying to reconnect with them.
No, but I'm saying from an editorial perspective, the reason why this story existed, the setup for this story was we need to reconnect Superman to Earth.
Mm-hmm. But it feels like a writer's privilege more than an editorial privilege to me.
Okay.
Because the next writer immediately was like, no, Flash says, no, I was stupid. I don't know what the fuck. I was joking, Superman.
Yeah, I see everything.
Yeah, if the editor allowed that, he fucked up. So bad editing.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, this is how the story was originally pitched, and whether JMS follows up on that is part of what we'll discuss. But like, that was the point, was supposed to reconnect him, just like Captain America did the exact same thing when he was a Nazi for a while. He rode a bike across America.
Oh, oops, my bad. It's like Superman.
Wow, he ripped off Superman.
Yeah, but.
It's like Superman goes and joins all of his Kryptonian buddies, then it's like, whoops, my bad, let me hang out with you guys for a bit. So I enjoyed this so much that I asked them, because this is 6 issues, and I asked them, it's like, hey, this keeps going on for like 6 more issues, you know, this ends the Superman titled series. I was like, should I keep reading? And both of you guys were like, no, you shouldn't. It just becomes like boring Superman stories. I was like, I'm going to keep reading to see what they do with it. And it became boring Superman stories, and it was definitely not a fun read. But it was interesting at least seeing like how Sly brought up that writer came in, and after the Flash had said in this Grounded series, where he's like, I see everything as a blur because I'm running so fast. And then there's like, I think at the speed of attoseconds. Like, that's where that meme comes from. And that's where he's like, I see everything all at once. And it got so indulgent on Superman that I would have liked to see the story somehow wrap up in like a way that the main writer Straczynski wanted it to.
Well, everyone hated this story when it came out, so he quit and to do stories people like more. He wrote Superman Year One. Me and Ryan. And
he wrote the Superman Earth 1 graphic novels that are more of the like human type Superman, but I think in a way that is more accessible and successful.
It's interesting that Darryl points out the people shitting on Superman, because for me, this comic is Superman being condescending to everyone, and the underlying theme that Superman is right along. So I don't take pleasure in people being wrong as Superman when he's being condescending prick.
Well, I described it as like a Socratic dialogue where he's like Socrates going around talking to everyone, and everyone that has complaints against him, he like shoots questions back at them to be like, but isn't this the right thing to do? Like, there was one exchange he had with a guy in the street.
Yeah, specifically the guy who's walking his dog. And he's like, you should be saving the world right now. You shouldn't be walking. And he talks about the Thoreau quote. Thoreau was in jail for civil disobedience. And then someone came to get him out and said, what are you doing in there? And he said, Thoreau says, no, what are you doing out there? And he's like, hey, if I'm in the hero box and you're not, I'm asking you, what are you doing out there to save to help people?
Mm-hmm. All right, so please explain to me what it has to do with him walking around on foot and him talking to this guy with a dog. I did not fucking get that.
It's him defending him being like I don't know, actually. Like, that was one that stumped me when I read it too.
Everything you guys are saying about him walking around America, when I read the story, I was excited to read because it sounds good on paper, but it's so obtuse and like it goes nowhere. Even before it actually went nowhere, it was going nowhere. What's the point of this fucking story?
For me, I like it going nowhere because it's kind of like a slice of life. It's like different people of different walks of life interacting with Superman, telling them they're either being like nice to him and feeding him at a diner, or they're like they miss him when they're just like asleep on the street. It's a story about the people around Superman, not necessarily like what is this doing for him himself, which is why I enjoyed it.
It's like him actually taking a second to look at what people live like and to see what life is like in actuality instead of just if I'm flying around.
I would again, on paper it sounds great. The problem is Superman's way too preachy for that to work. And every single page he's always making speeches about something. And that gets into Superman that Darryl claims he doesn't like all the time, where so he's judgmental and just preachy and just a bit goody two-shoes. Where I like Superman like we did in the Christmas special last year, where he just wants to sit and listen to you. And he does that in like one story here. but he still like does like when they're in a suicide situation, with this person committing suicide.
Yeah.
He wants to sit and talk for her, but he still does something douchey. He destroys the police's equipment just because the person doesn't want a spotlight on her. Like he could have just told the police, "Hey, can you show up a spotlight?" No, he destroys their equipment.
To me, that was one of those things where it's like the more realistic situations, he would fly down like super fast and like turn it off or something. Him using laser eyes was like that was definitely like a writing decision to be like, look how like he takes advantage of the situation, or he takes like control of the situation, which was a big thing. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I just about that scene real quick. I know I mentioned this last time, but I have to mention again. That whole entire suicide scene is done way better in 2 pages in Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, which came out earlier. So it's just like it's every time I see the scene, I'm like, I understand what this is going for, but like we already have the scene better somewhere else.
I think the Christmas special did last year did it better too, but I don't want to do comparisons like that.
No, but I think that's fair. But like that the suicide scene is so explicitly like the same thing.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't work. I think it works fine for what.
I don't know. I think it's all right. But like Darryl was saying, and I interrupted you, Darryl. Sorry. There's still like nuances of it that I think are weird that don't play as well. But
it's one of those things when we talk about comics where like when we did Batman Cacophony or Whiting Gyre, what the fuck was the good one? I think Whiting Gyre. We were like, this is like the typical Batman retiring story, and Phil, it was really novel to Phil, but for us. It was more standard.
Yeah,
I still think this is done one of the best scenes in the whole entire comic, but it does feel very similar to other scenes that are like this.
One of the other things about this too that like struck me, the thing is like I really enjoyed it, but I didn't really enjoy it like this is like a must read, everyone has to read it. It's more like seeing how the writer interprets Superman, like how Sly said that he comes off as very condescending. I'm like, oh, that's interesting that he's making him this way. And it's also like such a strangely conservative book when I was reading this.
Definitely.
Where it's like there's a whole thing about like illegal actual aliens in this planet in a neighborhood, and Superman's like, you gotta get back, you gotta do something, otherwise I'm gonna like out you. Like you have to be contributing with your culture to ours.
Yeah, it's very weird.
So that brings up a good point. So this is supposed to be the same Superman from Death of Superman, Infinite Crisis, and all those stories. This was the last story with that Superman in his original universe. Does it feel like the same Superman?
I mean, I don't know who Superman is, so I can't.
No, but you read Infinite Crisis, you read Death and Superman, you've read all these stories. Like, does this feel true to that character to you?
I mean, it's kind of like the same thing with Tom King, where it's like no Tom King character kind of feels like that character. It just feels like Tom King writing through them. It's like seeing this writer. It kind of just felt like his spin on Superman.
I know, but that's why my point is because that's what I hate. That's why I hate stories like this, and I hate Tom King's writing because you're supposed to at least try to make him feel like the same character.
I don't think what makes him feel so different to you.
Was Superman condescending at all in those early stories? He was very humble. In fact, one of the complaints of the crisis was he was too passive. He wasn't being enough of an inspiration in general and being too preachy enough. I've always viewed that Superman as very, very humble, and he would walk. I could very easily see him walk around the country. I could not see him saying most of the constant crap he says in this stuff.
And I can see that too. It's like he definitely comes across as more as humble there as opposed to like here.
Are you talking about scenes when he's talking to the reporters and he's like, I'm
walking?
reporters
basically, but he's like, like that speech to Henry Thoreau. Like he's acting like he's making a brilliant point, and the guy just says, "What are you talking about?" And that's what I feel like that guy.
The Liberty Bell speech is the biggest example of the because they're in Philadelphia when he's telling him about this, the Thoreau speech, and that's the biggest example of him. Really, like, would Superman do this to this guy? Where he'd be like, really? You need to think about this more, buddy. Instead of being like, I'm trying to do the best I can, citizen.
All right, so to bring up a specific question.
Well, funny story reading this. When he's talking to Batman about this, and Batman's like, you're having a breakdown, Superman's like, I can tell you've lost touch with Bruce over the past few years or whatever. And I thought he meant Batman lost touch with Bruce Wayne, like himself. Like, the costume lost touch with the person. And then after, I'm like, oh, this is not Bruce Wayne.
That's so fucking funny. I forgot. I would have forgotten that it happened around this time too.
This isn't Bruce Wayne?
Dick Grayson replaced Bruce Wayne.
Dick Grayson was Batman for like a couple of years.
Okay, whatever.
It's good stuff. It never should have been undone.
He should.
I thought the same as Phil, where I was like, I think that's like a pithy remark that he can make, where he's like, you've lost touch with your human self, like your non-Cape Crusader side. whatever.
Well, if this story was better written, because Bruce Wayne left. No, that was after he died. Never mind. I was about to say in 52 he left because he lost touch with Bruce Wayne, but never mind. Dick Grayson should have been Batman Forever. Fuck Bruce Wayne.
I forgot the other two really strangely conservative things that happened in it were the drug war stuff, where it's like,
yes,
hey,
I was about to ask that. Yes.
Yeah, in our like abandoned side of town and stuff, we have drug dealers that have taken over there. Superman goes there and he's like, I'm just gonna burn down all of your dens, like all the money in your dens, and it's like, and if you come back here, I'm just gonna beat the shit out of you if you do that. And then he gives that weird speech where he's like, it's good that the problem's not here anymore. We just got to make sure the problem's not here everywhere. Where it's like, you literally just made the move. Like, it's so dumb. And then there's also like the.
I mean, that's broken windows policing. Like, that was a huge thing that a lot of people believed at this point. I'm not saying that's good. I'm saying it's super dumb.
Yeah.
But like, that's what I think you're really hitting the nail on the head with the politics of this book being like weirdly conservative, but with Superman's preachy tone, it's so said like this is a clear solution that like it's not.
I know. Yeah. So I was asking about that. How do you feel about the scene where he tells a little kid to go tell bank robbers that he's gonna fuck up their not the bank robbers, the drug dealers, he's gonna fuck up their shit all the time?
You see that stuff is just like it's so weird because it's the writer trying to say Superman has come up to a solution with this small time problem, and it's like we need to work on things bit by bit, and it's like I understand that it's just this doesn't work. Like your goal should be to rehabilitate these drug dealers. Like a big thing about this too is about how America is failing because we're losing our industrialization sector. It's like like he even meets like the old man hobo that's like, I used to work here, but now I don't and stuff. And it seems like the answer is that you need to find jobs for these people. It's like that's why these kids have turned to drug dealing and crime, is that they don't have like good communities and they don't have good job opportunities. But instead it's just like, just don't do it. I'm like,
well, like most conservative social critiques, they only attack the symptoms and never attack the systems.
But also, what can Superman do about that?
Yeah,
but if the point of the story, that's what we're complaining about. They make it seem like he found a solution with the way he talks and the way he's acting.
And there's plenty of like, if the point of the story is exploring what can Superman do to fix these solutions, him not being able to fix them is also a valid part of the story. But
this goes deeper than a guy with laser eyes that can like solve your problem.
There's a story in the 2000s that like, and the reason why I keep bringing up other Superman stories, like Sly said, I don't want to keep just comparing it to everything, but like, it's when you're exploring these concepts, there's a Batman story where Gotham is completely shut out from the rest of the world and is basically just like this earthquake-ridden wasteland. And Superman comes and he's like, I'll save the day. And Batman's like, that's not like, are you going to rebuild our entire infrastructure? Are you going to like feed everybody for years? No, you can't help. And like the story resolves with Superman basically being like, I don't know what to do to help these people. And if you're going to have him like reconnect with America and walk across America, that could be a valid and powerful point to make in the story. But the point that JMS makes is Superman, he fixed the problem. He sent these kids to go fight these drug dealers.
And Sly, looking at this panel, I did not realize that he actually tells a little child to give these drug dealers a message. That is, like, it's supposed to be, like, nice because this kid's, like, offering him candy. It's like, here, it's like, hey, I saved your, like, town. Can you do something for me? But it's like, that wouldn't work at all.
That kid's dead.
I thought that too when I saw that. At first I was like, maybe it's like, if you've seen like The Wire, a lot of times these gangs have like young kid like runners or whatever. And I was like, maybe this kid's part of the gang and he's telling.
I don't think the story has that much knowledge of actual drug culture or gang culture.
And the kid's obviously not part of like because he's offering candy. He's not. Like,
candy. Oh, you just fell for his cover, Phil.
And the last like super conservative thing was at the end of the story with the dad that beats his wife and his son. And it was just such a bizarre thing where like Superman saves his kid, then gives him like, here's my private phone number. Call me again. And no, wait, call me every day. And if you don't call me, I'll go beat the shit out of your dad, which is just the most bizarre thing, too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, is Superman going to personally police 1 million families to make sure that their abusive dads don't return?
Yeah.
It's such like an effective story of this kid loving and adoring Superman, looking up to him and wanting him in like a moment of crisis where it's like, this could have turned into something like inspirational, but instead it's Superman's like, I'll be your personal bodyguard, but only because you like if you miss a call, I'll know your dad did something to you.
And it's not like there's no reason why I don't like the story, because there's always issues in this world, and it'd be such a powerful story if it was like, wow, like how do we solve like fucking like domestic abuse and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
that's like an all-encompassing problem in our society. But like, they try to give it like a sense of like closure and satisfaction instead of being like, I'm doing what I can, like I'm trying to solve this problem, but it's a problem for our society. But no, it's like I solved it. This is great. I fixed this problem.
Yeah, it gets back to what you said about like Superman being like a different type of Superman here, where it's like he never did like the proactive like I'm gonna like check up on you, and if you're not doing well, like there will be consequences. He tells them it's always like you put someone away in jail or you stop them, and Superman's like that's good enough for now. Rather than like I'm gonna need to check up on you to make sure you're not like parole officer Superman.
It's so weird.
But like at the same time, maybe it's like he's not fixing this problem for everyone, but he's fixing it for this kid. Like that's the thing is like he's like the same thing with the woman with her husband. Like he fixed it. He's helping the little people individually, where in the past he just ignores that.
Well, that's why I would like it, like, maybe without the ending on, like, I'm going to be your personal bodyguard from now on.
Yeah.
Instead, it's just, like, you saved this kid, and then maybe you tell him something inspiring so that he grows up, like, stronger so he can defend his mom or something.
Because, like, if the point of the story is to stop Superman from being a god figure, him just being like, I'm always watching over you is not a good resolution.
I didn't reread this or rewatch or re-listen to our whole episode because I'm fucking lazy. So I remember him doing that constantly throughout the story too, being like, call me if something changes here or whatever. And like that also made me not like the story because there's no way he's keeping tabs on all these people he's meeting in the story. Like there's no humanly possible way unless they're trying to establish him as a god figure.
I think that he's the only one who he says I'm going to call you all the time.
No, he doesn't say like the drugs like the drug people come back. I'll fuck them
it's
up
just
again.
the drug dealer and it's the kid with the abusive father. It's like those are both the things where it's like I'm gonna personally take over if they decide to return or do something bad again. Which to me is like it's such a stupid setup too, because at the very beginning it starts with Superman, you weren't here to help me and now my husband's dead. And now he's like, I will be here to help you. Where it's like you don't know the next time you're gonna have a space mission or you're gonna be lost in time or there's a crisis. Like there's such weird solutions that don't make sense even within the bounds of the story.
He's also not setting up a system where he will be there to stop the bad thing from happening. It's if the bad thing happens again, I'll go beat somebody up. So like, I think if this kid gets abused or killed, or the drug dealers kill somebody, then he'll just come and clean it up.
I think the idea is this is the prevention. The threat of violence against the dad. If you know Superman will kick your ass, you have prevented it kind of because now.
Like harsh punishment doesn't deter crime.
Yeah, it really doesn't. He's just gonna assume he's gonna get away with it and like find a way to keep his son's mouth shut at some point and just beat the shit out of him more.
I don't know. When was this? Like 2009? Maybe I'm just way too grounded in all like the data that's come out since then. Yeah. Whereas like I guess in this at this time period, this was like these were a lot of policies that people were really pushing. So maybe
no, but that's a problem with. There's a reason like we the story I feel like is clearly trying to go for. There was a Green Lantern, Green Arrow story we talked about all the times with Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams, where they go across America and see all the problems inside society. But a lot of them is like, wow, these are very complex issues, and this is not a black and white world like we once thought. While here, it's suggesting a conservative, slanted solution to these, including like more punishment, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like, and that's why the story didn't get received as well. But why? And this is like a recurring trend because you see a lot of people trying to make stories like that original '70s story. We should eventually do the modern Captain America stories, the one with like Black Falcon and stuff like that, because they do a lot of this where they don't have a good solution, but they still present their solutions as the right ones, even though like, they try to simplify issues instead of painting the worlds more complicated like the original '70s story did.
It makes me wonder if because it's Superman, you have to paint there being a solution that we can access, rather than like, oh, it's just complicated. Like I don't know if that's like. In a post like 9/11 world, if that's a positive or if that's what like a main superhero would want.
This is why I push back
it's
on
being like, oh, it's complicated. What are you gonna do? Instead of like, no, we can fix this problem.
The reason why I pushed, maybe that's the writer's intention, but that's why I pushed back on Ryan Singer's editorial, because J. Michael Straczynski was a TV writer. He wrote Babylon 5. And he became one of the bigger names in comics. So I have a hard time imagining he didn't want to do the story the way it's written. And the fact that he negated so much of what he wrote immediately after makes it seem like this is his vision. It's just that he did the same thing Nick Spencer did in Captain America, where he's like, I'm going to push solutions. when I'm really pushing a simplified narrative of a complex world.
Yeah, a kind of like personal politics solution to this, which is like
yeah, absolutely
strange for Superman to do.
And one last question: how do you guys feel about the legal aliens subplot?
That was like
Weird.
to me. It's like you needed at least like some kind of like comic book. Like once he went into that house, I'm like maybe there would be like people wanting to kill Superman for just like walking around or like stumbling on their secret hideout accidentally. But then it's like I appreciate that it turned into there being illegal aliens. It's one of those things where it's like maybe I've read too many comic books. I'm like, yeah, okay, it makes sense for there to be illegal aliens that have like use holograms to change how they look so that they blend in with society. I'm like, sure. But the way it wrapped up with the old man that was dying being saved by them and then working for their future company is it's a too positive vision. Whereas I like him, I kind of like him for like 2009, him going to these aliens and being like, I don't know if you guys should be allowed to stay. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. But then they're like, oh, we have like great technology, and then we work with the government now to give them this technology to like cure diseases. And it's too utopian for me.
Yeah, he's presenting a complex issue about legal immigration, and then he presents a solution saying, as long as immigrants prove useful, we should allow them in. So again, it's presenting a complex issue, presenting a simplified solution.
And again, not just like a simplified one, but again, like a conservative one where it's like, oh, you can only stay here if you're useful to us, if you contribute to our like market.
So what are your final thoughts overall then?
I still liked it.
Yep, that's the thing is I still liked it because it was more interesting to me than a lot of other comics where it's like I get to actually see this guy's like politics and ways how he handles these solutions or how he handles these problems. Even if they fail, it's like it's way more interesting than the next 6 issues of Grounded, which is the next one ends with them being like a Superman squad coming down being like, in the future, everyone is you now because we're all saving the universe through space and time. And it's like, oh, it's so worshipy and fetishistic. Whereas here it was like Superman like butting his head against problems that didn't have easy solutions. And even if he gave them easy solutions, as a reader, you could at least recognize where you're like, this isn't a good solution to this.
Right.
Rather than, like an alien from another dimension coming in. It's like, well, of course, I guess Superman blows it up and then, there's no problem there. The alien's dead. Everyone's happy.
So it's interesting to see a non-comic fan's perspective on this because we didn't like it when we read it, but as much as we didn't like it, me and Ryan both went on to read the rest of it. You read, and so did Darryl. So at least shows that the premise and the execution to some extent does have potential.
I would have read it if you guys weren't like it sucks.
Yep. Yeah, it at least presents a very interesting scenario that you want to keep learning more about.
Also, one thing I just want to say about the story in general, I'm not going to defend the story or say that it's like good, but it is like when people first get into comics, it's so easy to find huge long lists of best Batman stories to read, but best Superman stories to read are usually way, 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 way shorter because there's a lot of really like fillery, generic, like the second half of the stuff, like very just bland so Superman fillery stuff. But like there is, like hundreds of generic Superman issues, and Grounded, while I don't think it's good, I do think it tries to do something a little different, and I do think it has some ambition to it, even if like JMS's politics are not handled well and the story itself has a lot of holes in it. I do find it to be more memorable and like worth talking about than like 90% of other Superman stories.
I think it's very memorable, no matter how flawed it is.
Well,
it's like how many other people have been like, with Superman, let's just have him like talk to people.
Yeah. We did on the show back when we did 12 episodes only in our back pocket. Yeah. We were like, this is one of the most memorable comics we could think about at the time. So clearly it stood out to us, even if we didn't like it.
And I think it's something that is like worth revisiting and looking at because like when we compare it to other like political heartland America stories that comics have done, why doesn't this one hold up well? And like especially, I was wrong when I said 2009. It's 2010, 2011. But like,
well, how dare you?
Yeah, I know. But like, I think it's very interesting when you look at it now, like way more detached from it, about like the politics in this book are not timeless at all. They're very much like that kind of like politics that a lot of like moderate liberals want to believe.
Yeah, like the Bush into Obama transition, where Obama kind of edges more to the center left. after the Bush years. That's kind of like what this represents.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's like Superman's not like necessarily like it's a conservative slant, but it's almost dressed up like a compassionate liberal politic. And
Well, I think
that,
Superman himself exists kind of as that, where he's like, he's not here to punish you or to like, he's not like a Punisher type of person. He's here to like help you, save you, and inspire you. Like inspiration is a very liberal idea.
Yeah, I also would say that it feels not timeless to you because your views have changed over the years to become much more left. But I feel like for many people, like they would be in favor of immigration if you can bring something. Like most people are not in favor of like open borders and things like that.
Yeah.
So
And
like,
even like the thing to the abusive dad ending, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people that are like, yeah, this is a good thing, is to make sure you check up on this kid to make sure he's still alive.
I'm not talking so much about like the merit-based immigration. I mean more like the like just clean up this neighborhood and it'll fix the problem of drugs. Or we didn't mention it, but I didn't reread it either. But I recall a scene where there's like a factory closing down and they're like, let's strike a balance between the owners of the factory that want to like pollute and the people that need this as a job.
That was in the second half.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that was the last time I was interested in this story, because it was Superman actually being like, I don't know what to do here, because Lois was like reporting on the story.
I was thinking of putting that in because it's I think it was half written by Straczynski the way it feels.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
But it ends with the Superman from the future saying, "Superman, you're so great." So it feels like the new writer came in right at the end, last tail end of that.
But like I think that's what it is a factory is like polluting a lot, but if Lois exposes the pollution, everyone in the factory loses their job.
Yeah, it shuts down the factory, so then these people lose their jobs, and they're like, this job is all I'm good at doing. You have to like, we want to pollute because it saves us.
I want to clarify a bit. Well, when I talk about merit-based immigration, I don't know how I feel about myself. So I'm not saying that, wow, fuck you for saying that, open borders. I'm not saying it that way. I'm saying the way to present it is we found the perfect balance between these two problems. That's what I find a problem with.
But that's what I mean is, to me, this feels like that very like early Obama like idea where it's like, oh, if we just talk it out, we'll figure it out. A perfect compromise exists. Yeah. And like I think we've learned since then that there are some things that like there are some arguments, and I'm not saying this book frames anything in a bad faith argument, but I think that there are like I think we're less optimistic about that. Like the perfect solution is truly in the middle. You know what I mean? Like it feels very post-Bush to me.
I agree that him fixing the like Band-Aid problems is not Band-Aid solutions are not fixing the overall problem, but I feel like that's what the book is about, because the big picture stuff is what he's always focusing on, and he's like, fine, for once I'm not going to say how do I solve world hunger, I'm going to feed a hungry person on the street. Like
that's fair. That's a very
it's
interesting
him saying
kind of
I'm fixing these individual things and talking to human beings and seeing their problems and trying to help them out where I can, instead of being like I have to change the world on a grand scale. Like it's about the minute details here.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's really fair, and I think I'm probably too close to the overall exploration of the character to look at it as strictly like just if you were a god type figure, how would a grounded story look? Where I'm looking at more of like, would Superman do these things instead of would a generic superhero figure do these things? And I think that's a really interesting point.
The last thing I want to bring up is that in this panel of like Batman and Superman talking, since Dick Grayson's Batman, he's always grimacing like Bruce is. I'm like, that's such a missed opportunity to show that Dick's a different Batman than Bruce.
I have a feeling the artist didn't know that, and he edited it in the writing.
I agree, because like I said, I didn't know until I was looking at I went back and I'm reading the panels again.
He's always grimacing.
I'm like, oh, this isn't Bruce Wayne.
Because the cool thing about Dick as Batman is Dick, because like Batman. Dick is Batman. His Robin was Batman's son, who was raised by the League of Shadows, the Ra's al Ghul organization. So you had a situation where you had optimistic, happy, positive Batman, and a grim, dark, gritty Robin. So like that was what cool about his dynamic.
Yeah, that sounds cool. All right,
cool.
Decent story. We got a lot of talking out of it, which is something you can say about it too.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely. So, as we often do at the end of a calendar year, we look back at our favorites and least favorites, and I think it'll probably be best if we do all least favorites first, and then all favorites, to kind of hype up the good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to be hyping up the good rather than like, stay to hear what we hate.
Yeah. And some of them may be shameless plugs for the Patreon. Some of them might not. But let's get into it. Sly, you want to go first?
Let's go in order, I guess. Ryan, me.
Yes. So, okay, my least favorite, clearly, like, anyone who listens to our Patreon knows that I fucking despise Heroes in Crisis a lot. But I have to say that my least favorite really had to be the tail end of Bleach. I'm sorry, Darryl.
Are you really going to put Bleach below Heroes in Crisis?
And below Ultimate 3
crazy.
even. Wow. Like
Here's the thing. The reason why, this is why, is because I feel like I want to pick something that we did on the main feed show to talk about. Mm-hmm. And Ultimate 3? Ultimate 3 was 5 issues. It took me 23 minutes to read.
There's a lot of text in Ultimates 3. Bleach was mostly just like people yelling at each other.
That's true. The thing is, I think it's also because, like, Ultimates 3, it's like latter day Jeff Loeb, and like Heroes in Crisis was Tom King. Like, I kind of knew that there was, like, after the first issue of Heroes in Crisis, I didn't really have many expectations, but because I enjoyed the first half of Bleach so much, I was just like so disheartened by the hundreds and hundreds of pages of like, why is this so not the same as what it was before? You know what I mean? Like, I think like Ultimate 3, I had no expectations whatsoever.
Yeah, and I feel like if you read something mediocre to bad, but you read like hundreds of pages of it, whereas like Ultimates 3 was over, like it's over by the time you finish it. You're like, oh, that was, what a mess.
Ultimate 3 is clearly worse. Like, I'm not going to say Bleach is worse than Ultimate 3.
Because we're doing favorite and least favorite, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But Bleach, I thoroughly loved doing it on the show and going through the whole big saga, especially with you taking the reins and everything. Like, it was great and a fun experience. But, like, reading it, I was just like, what's going on? And because I didn't care about a lot of the things, I like couldn't tell who any of the characters were by the end. And then when we recorded, I was like, I'll pick it up from context clues.
From doing the editing the episode, you just drop off in that last episode like entirely. Like you just pop in a couple times with like some sardonic joke or something, and then that's it.
I was also sick. Which made it worse because I was just like, oh my god.
I was like, whenever someone doesn't participate, it's usually because they're just like,
yeah. But like I said, I think it was good for the show, but bad for the soul.
That's good. Good tagline for Bleach.
But okay, what about you, Sly?
I'm gonna go. Heroes in Crisis is gonna be boring. It's fucking terrible. I will say, people when I shat on Bleach the final part, people were saying, "Dislike like anything." I didn't put it my worst of the year, so fuck all you fans. I'm not the fucking hater on the show. But yeah, Here's the Crisis was way worse to me. Bleach, as much as I hated like the presentation of the final part, I don't think it compares to anything. It's the opposite issue, because Here's the Crisis was great presentation for the most part, but in the underlying beneath that shiny surface, it was just so trash. I don't think it worked.
Heroes of Crisis was deeply offensive to me, so maybe they're tied.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that because it was a lot more deeply like offensive than Bleach, which was just kind of like it just gets dumb and up its own ass with its powers? That you're like, oh, whatever. Heroes in Crisis is like taking these characters and continuity you care about and not serving them well.
That's a good question, because I don't know if I ever said this on the show, but I should say, I always defend stuff that's ambitious, even if it's flawed. Yeah. I also generally really hate stuff that thinks it's smarter than it actually is. Here's in Crisis thinks it's so fucking smart, it is fucking dumb as shit. Bleach knows it's dumb, and it's fucking happy being dumb. That's
why you got so mad at the David Thoreau quote, the Henry.
Yes,
David
yeah, that's why I bitched about ground too.
That wasn't a joke, like sincerely. That's
no, I know it makes sense now too. Where it's like, what was the point of this, Mr. Smarty Pants?
No, but because if it's not even like a writer can't try to be ambitious and try to be smart, but like. I hate it when they feel like we nailed it. Like, and like the fact that Tom King on this page was saying you should read my book again to get it right. Like you read it wrong. I wrote it right. Like I'm like no.
That's a special salt in the wound.
Then I'm like no. You just fuck off. Like fuck off. That's me.
Not a bad choice. What about you, Phil?
Ultimate 3 I think was the worst thing I read this year, but I don't even remember it really. So it obviously it doesn't trigger like a visceral reaction in me. Yeah. Because I forgot, I blocked it all out. But I remember
Wolverine cooking Magneto. That's pretty good. DNA seeking bullets.
I forgot about that too. I forgot about everything. But yeah, that was really bad. But Heroes in Crisis.
Captain America was Black Panther for no reason.
Oh yeah, no, that is the worst thing I read. That's the worst. It is nothing that bad. I mean, Heroes in Crisis provoked a more visceral reaction in me when reading it because we read it for so long too, probably. That I just every week dreaded going to, or however often it came out,
Mm-hmm.
like just reading that and being like, oh, Harley Quinn's beating up Flash again, but it's maybe not. Maybe it's all, whatever.
I love
maybe
that
it's all
you had to
holograms.
read 2 issues every 2 months, and you're like every week.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But Ultimates probably they're tied. They're both so shitty. They're both so fucking bad.
Well, that's nice to hear. I'm not going with any of those choices because I enjoyed, sort of like with Grounded, I enjoyed seeing the failing of Heroes in Crisis. And I thought because it was trying to say something interesting made it more valuable than a lot of other comics which weren't doing interesting things. And Ultimates 3 was so terrible that I was like just having such a great time with it.
Yeah,
Like,
for
it
sure.
was not good at all, but it's just like it kept spiraling into bad in ways that were profoundly bad, like the whole like Ultron speech about like him and his father, about him hating him. It's so bizarre and bad. What I think about when I'm like, I don't want to read any more of this, I actually just didn't enjoy it, or I enjoyed it like a little bit, but I'm like 100% I don't want to read any more of this.
52.
It's Scooby-Doo Apocalypse.
I also didn't want to read more of that.
It's
but
not
I didn't hate it.
terrible, but it was one of those where I was just like, you know, give me the failing of Ultimates 3 or Heroes in Crisis is like poor, like ambition that it doesn't capitalize on, that it's just like it ruins itself. But Scooby-Doo Apocalypse was just like, man, there's just so much of this left, and I'm not into zombie stories, I'm not into Scooby-Doo. It's kind of neat seeing the modern spins on it, but it was just going on, and it didn't feel like it was saying anything to me, speaking to like the human experience, kind of like what Grounded was doing.
That's funny because that's why I was always saying we should do more modern comics, and I said I don't want to. That's why I don't like doing more modern comics, because like Grounded and Heroes in Crisis, they're more like 2000s era ambition kind of comics, as flawed as they are. More modern comics are more like Scooby-Doo, from what I could tell. Just like, why am I reading this at a certain point?
Yeah, and it's the why am I reading this
I can see that.
usually gets to me more than other things, unless it's like purposely offensive, like Unfunnies. Like that will always be bottom tier trash. But beyond that, it's just like favorite wise, Scooby-Doo isn't like we've read worse things, but that's something I don't want to return to.
So now favorites.
So now we're gonna.
I just want to say I'm so happy I missed Daryl's worst comic of the year.
What do you mean you missed it?
I wasn't there for that episode.
Oh. Why are you happy about that?
Because I missed a bad one. I always fucking am here for every.
Oh yeah,
every show, every
I feel like you wouldn't have enjoyed that much.
I liked it. But I think all your opinions totally make sense.
Yeah.
So Sly and I were talking about this before we started recording, and I always, for favorites, like to pick things I hadn't read before. So I do just want to quickly just say that I really, really loved reading through and seeing Phil and Darryl's reaction to like Countdown to Infinite Crisis and 52, and especially one of my favorite books of all time, Flex Mentallo, Man of Muscle Mystery. And like seeing how you guys, like, that was, I think Flex Mentallo was my favorite episode all year, because like I love that book, and seeing you guys like trying to make sense of it, but also like understanding what I really liked about it, like that was really great for me. But I think my favorite unexpected thing was probably Tales from the Crypt. Because I really loved the art in those stories, the plotting, the pacing, like how much was crammed in so few pages. And like, I always talk about how much I love 40s and 50s comics, and they're really like, they're never really relevant, and they're never really anything that is worth doing on the show. But seeing those kind of stories for a Halloween special, like, it really showcased what I love about this medium, that like, you can, if you have a good creative team and 8 pages, you could have something like sit with someone for a really long time.
One of the things I would say about it, just to say how much I enjoyed it too, is it's one of those, I went into it not expecting to like enjoy it nearly as much as I did. Like I finished it and I was like, wow, those are really good stories. Like even if you have like no interest in Tales of the Crypt, I would say that they're definitely worth a read or like a listen to that episode, because it was so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So I think Tales from the Crypt was my favorite.
Wait,
Also, there's
hold on.
puns in it.
I'm
so
sorry to backpedal, but no one picked Death's Head 2 for their least favorite?
I mean, it's like,
I thought about it.
oh, so Phil thought about it.
Honorable
about
mention.
But like, it still wasn't shitty enough to be my least
Yes.
favorite.
Death's Head 2.
And the X-Men were in it, right? That was good.
Yeah.
I like X-Men.
Death's Head 2 is too American '90s comics what Bleach was to a shonen. Like it's just an embodiment of a shitty version of a format, but it doesn't do like anything egregiously bad or anything. It's just an embodiment of that kind of style, like that goofy, over the top kind of style. So I can't really muster any hate for it.
Okay.
I like how Ryan said like he can. It's like maybe I can muster hate for it.
So Sly, what was your favorite?
So I like Ryan. I don't like to pick stuff I read before, because like then I'll pick the stuff I brought to this show because they're my favorite from many years before, and I already evaluate them, rank them in my favorites or whatever, and we read them multiple times. So I want to go for something that surprised me, like it surprised Phil and Darryl. So for that, I'm going to pick Shazam.
Cool. I thought about it too.
So I wanted to read that story when it was coming out, but it was a backup to Justice League, which was the worst comic at the time coming out. So I'm not gonna read that fucking shit just to get 5 pages of Shazam. But it is exactly what I think a comic book reboot should do. It like you could tell Jeff Johns loves the character and like all the allusions he puts into it, like the fucking tiger and the monkey people and stuff like that. The monkey sins or whatever, because their sins were just like monkeys or something like that, and he made them like statues in the thing, and like just illusions in the background that only Ryan will point out, but new fans would never...
it doesn't affect the reading where you're like, who is this guy in here?
But it helps bake it into the lore so that if they do explore it further later, it's not out of nowhere.
And it cleans it up. And I think it gives it... it's not just a retelling of what happened before. It like puts a twist on it, because Billy in the new series is a lot more... it's a lot less American home... good old happy boy Billy that he was in the 50s.
He's less of like the main boy from like all the pre-70s comics where it's like, hey, what are you doing, mister?
And it expands his supporting cast.
Exactly, I was going to say that.
And
it immediately fleshes out the Shazam family, and it expands even further than it was before. Instead of just having 3 people, now it's already up to 5 or whatever it was. And so like it's not just a retelling of the original story. It cleans up a lot of the lore while still alluding to it. You can tell the writer really loves this stuff, and it really sets a great stage for a story going forward. I think it's exactly what you should do a reboot. How exactly you should do a reboot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, that's a good story.
Yeah, it really was.
Phil, your favorite?
So I don't think it was. I'm not sure if it was the best thing we read this year, but the thing when I look back, the thing I have the most good feelings towards was actually 52.
Yes,
Makes sense.
I had such a good time reading that. I felt really invested in the DC universe for the first time and last time ever, the only time ever. I was so interested to see where it went. I found so many of the character plots interesting. There was comic-y stuff. Obviously, it's very comic-y, but it was also, there's a lot of human stories in it that I thought were really good. And just overall, I think when I just have warm feelings towards that story. It had a good twists, good action, it was just good. It was just really good.
Yeah, you liked a lot of the characters in it too, and like the subplots, like the Black Adam.
Oh my god, yeah, I loved all that. I loved the Sobek reveal. Blew my mind.
Sobek, yeah, that was.
I still think about that.
Sobek, no.
I'm so glad that somebody picked 52. I think I would have been really sad if nobody did.
It was great. I really liked 52.
That's what I was thinking about when I was trying to look at the list. Is like, there's a difference between favorite and least favorite type of stuff, where I can recognize the quality and inherent like greatness of 52, like how hard that must have been to put together and how amazing it was to pull everything off. But it's like when it's thinking about like favorite stuff, it's like my favorite stuff doesn't always coincide with what is the most polished. 52 is definitely the most polished, and that is the best thing we read this year. But it's like my favorite stuff is always going to be more, I don't know, different stuff. And for me, we read so many good things that I had honorable mentions that I wanted to say for this, because I'm like, I can't forget about talking about this. And you guys picked the 3 that didn't get into the honorable mentions, where I was like, these were all really good stories. But it's like, for me, one of the things I felt most passionate about was during Countdown to Infinite Crisis. It was the Wonder Woman versus Superman fight, where I was like, this is the best single issue that I've read like this year with the Maxwell Lord murder. It was like
Countdown was my second favorite.
It was just like such a fascinating issue for me, where it's like, what do you do if Superman thinks that you just killed Lois Lane and he's coming after your ass to beat you down? And it's like, for me, you've seen how I reacted throughout all of Bleach, where I'm like, what's their Bankai do? What's this Bankai? It's like, I'm really big in like power clashes between two characters, and like walking you through, it's like that you need to be careful of this, this, and this. And I thought that was really great. And the other thing that I really liked, and just from like the other honorable mention from just like ambition standpoint, is I really enjoyed Miss Marvel. And that was the one where I was like,
that almost made my list.
Out of everything, I want to buy a trade of this the most. Because I enjoyed like how like simple it was, how fun it was, but also like how just interesting it was. And I love her character of Kamala Khan. She's great. But my favorite this year has to be Flex Mental, Man of Muscle Mystery.
Yeah, that was really good.
It hit every spot that I like, where it's like obtuse language, like confusing visuals, and it was also like self-critiquing the comic industry. And it's like, once you get into like, there's a portion of the book which has a superhero orgy going on, and the writing there was just so fantastic, and like it really tickled the part of my brain that like doesn't get activated by comics ever, where I'm like, what is going on here?
What's funny, Darryl, is when you were saying that 52 was the best, but Flex Mental is your favorite. I feel like Flex Mental is more art than anything we've read this year. Like, I feel like that was the best if we were going to objectively rate this stuff as art.
It
I love
felt
you guys
like
so much.
It felt like a graphic novel more than just like comic. It was using a comic guy and like comic undertones, but it was such like a wild thing. And the only thing that makes me hesitant is Sly being like, once you get used to Grant Morrison's writing, it's like, hey, you'll see this in everything.
I should clarify. It's like Flex Mental is different from most Grant Morrison, because Grant Morrison starts writing actual main lines like Batman and stuff like that. So when you're reading like Batman,
he's the one that makes Dick Grayson Batman.
Yeah. But my point is more like when you're reading like Batman, all of a sudden you see weird shit start happening, and it's more off-putting.
Like, oh, this is Morrison.
Yeah, it's more. It gets more off-putting when you see it repeatedly. At least for me.
Depends on the audience, because for me, I'm like, finally, I could get into this.
Yeah, it's like, think about it. It was kind of like if you read like a really good Millar book first, and you're like, oh, I like how like dark this gets, or like how like he's not afraid to kill kids. And then maybe you get to a point where you're like, this is just what he does. He just likes killing kids.
Well, even when you were, Darryl, last time you visited, you were reading Red Sun, definitely the most, like, positively viewed Millar book. And you were just like, yeah, but there's still, like, these Millar things.
Lex Luthor in it is a Millar character. He's like, oh, I have an IQ of 10 million. You're like, okay,
yeah, I just I'll solve the federal budget on a napkin and, like, things like that. But, like, when I read that book, I didn't ever notice that stuff because I didn't...
Yeah.
I wasn't checking the Millar boxes.
And I could see that with like maybe Morrison, as if when we read more and we get to it where it's like, oh, okay. But as a first introduction, Flex Mental was a ride that I will never forget. And I really enjoyed.
Excellent. Cool. Yeah, I like when we all have like such different picks.
Yeah. Well, it shows that we weren't just doing... We all our least favorites are kind of edging towards the same area.
Yeah, that's true.
But it shows that we did more good stuff this year generally than bad stuff.
I considered having Bleach be my favorite and least favorite.
I thought Darryl was gonna say Bleach was his favorite. Like after all that, like after 52,
do you? Because he was like, I want you to read it because I hate it.
No, but like,
but the reason why I almost considered doing the same for both, and I think if I was to give both my favorite and least favorite at the same time, I might have. But the reason why is because the thing that I love about comics and like extended universes and things like that is the large, long form narrative and storytelling that you don't get anywhere else. You're starting to get that more with television, but not. It's like there's nothing like comics. And seeing, even though like I didn't like where it ended up, seeing someone else walk me through an entire long established universe is such
15
a fun
years of content.
Yeah, it's such a fun thing that I very rarely get to do anymore, because it reminds me of like when I first started reading comics and like Sly and Joe would like give me lists and I would slowly work my way through them and then we talk about them and everything. And like, because I've read so much and know how to do the research on my own, I haven't had somebody like hold my hand through an entire narrative in such a long time that like it was very, very fun, even when the book was not.
Oh, I gotta do that noodle now. Fuck.
Noodle.
Noodle. What the fuck did I say?
That's always on the... It's hard because Bleach is like so shitty with its storytelling that it can be summed up in, the 7 parts.
Yeah, you can just skip most of it and be like, oh, this fucking fights a baby trapped in a monster's
Yeah,
body.
whereas I feel like you can't do that with almost like anything else, because people like expanding on stories or telling interesting things with its like side plots and stuff. And Bleach was like, I hit most of the There's a couple like interesting parts we missed, but that was like whatever.
Cool. So does anybody else have anything else to add?
This was a good year for comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, maybe not with Heroes in Crisis, coming out and all, but
It was a good year to read comics, not from this year.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. What was it? 3 of our 4 release favorite comics were from like this year.
Yeah. So, thank you guys for supporting us this whole year. We mentioned the Patreon before, where you could hear a lot of Heroes in Crisis episodes and a bunch of other stuff, some fun stuff. We mentioned the Jimmy Olsen stuff too. We do a lot of fun, more accessible, short form stuff on there. So if you head over to patreon.com/Flying Machine, you could get, all of our monthly episodes and all the ones going forward for $5 a month. And you also get all shows from all the other shows on the network too. So you get lots and lots and lots of stuff. At this point, it's got to be like hundreds of hours, I think. Oh, there's also all the old stuff. Like we did lots of old crossovers like way back in the day that are still on there. So yeah, maybe actually probably hundreds of hours. But if not, it's gonna be there soon. So yeah, head over to patreon.com/Flying Machine and check all that stuff out. So thank you all for listening to Divisive Issues for the year of 2019. I've been your friendly neighborhood crypt keeper.
I stopped paying attention just let everyone else handle the narration for me.
I've been 52.
And I've been seeing infinite universes colliding. Ah, shit, those comics, they fuck you up.
Stay in continuity.